Have you ever heard of the 4B movement? The 4B movement is completely news to me. I did not know that this existed. Apparently, it originated in South Korea, and it's a movement that some liberal females are now investigating. Google searches for the 4B movement spiked a lot this week. I think it's up in the hundreds of thousands. And the 4B movement, for those of you who aren't up on your fringe South Korean movements, and I'm not, I'm going to be honest with you, it is apparently a movement among child age bearing women to not take a husband, to not be in relationships with men, and to not have children. Just tapping out on relationships and motherhood and all of that. I don't know if blue, green, pink, or red hair dye is supplied with this when you join the movement. It sort of sounds like it might be. We've got some American women investigating it. We're hearing multiple reports across the country of young women breaking up with their Republican boyfriends because Donald Trump is the wedge that has broken up their happy relationships. Let's take a look at one of these liberal child-bearing age women who is saying that the 4B movement may just be for her, and she's so committed to it, she's ready to chop off all of her hair.
You women, stop dating men. Stop having sex with men. Stop talking to men. Divorce your husbands. Leave your boyfriends. Leave them. They don't give a about you. And I promise you, come over to this side. I will bake cookies. I will shave your head if you want me to, depending on how this turns out. Do a little more trimming before we buzz it. Where's my chop it? Cut my hair before. It's like, oh, don't cut your own hair. All right. When people tell me I can't do something, I want to fucking do it. Just entering my middle-aged mom era. About to get the clippers out.
Who wants to find domestic happiness with a loving partner and raise a beautiful family when you can go shave your head and have that lady serve you cookies? It's an irresistible offer for any young woman. I don't think that doubling down on being fucking weird is really going to be the solution here for the left. You just lost this election because of a lot of the weirdness, whether that is the quote unquote gender affirming child mutilation that has been getting pushed, whether that is pushing males into female locker rooms and saying that it's okay for biological men to compete against women. There's a lot of ways that the left has just gone weird. Drag queen story time. What are we doing here? So if you think the response to being repudiated largely because you've just gotten so weird and out of touch with mainstream American values is to pick up some fringe Korean childless cat lady movement, I don't think that is really going to be the solution. They were all so offended when J.D. Vance had made the comment about childless cat ladies, and when Trump wins the election, apparently there is a movement afoot now that is like, hey, let's all become childless cat ladies. That'll show everybody. They were offended by it. Now this is what they want to do. I think, do we have the picture, Tim, of the lady with her cat that is out there? First of all, I'm offended by them stealing the poll of the day screeching eagle sound effect. No eagle, no self-respecting American bald eagle is going to endorse a woman breaking up with her boyfriend and joining the 4B movement. And if you really are joining the 4B movement, good luck to you. You've already got a cat. You're on your way. That cat is the starter pack to unhappy, aged, progressive woman. So right there, the cat you've already got. Maybe chop your hair off now. Just stay at home. Don't date anybody. Don't take a husband. I'm sure that will be a great plan for a lot of these women. I do not get it. Fringe movements are what sunk the Democrats on Tuesday, and dealing with the stress and trauma of an outcome that they're not happy with to go find other fringier fringe movements to become a part of is really not the path back to restoring the Democratic Party to something that moderates and independents can see as an appealing option. Obviously, I don't expect it to be like a light switch where the Democrats get it within 1 or 2 or 3 days, but the smarter among them are already commenting on some of the places that they went wrong this election season. And in time, hopefully, there are still enough cooler heads over there on that side of the spectrum to make some remedies and try to figure out how to better connect with mainstream middle America. Because this kind of stuff ain't it. It really is just diving deeper into the pool of weirdness that got you here in the first place. Stephen A. Smith is calling out Oprah Winfrey. You may remember on this program, I believe last week, or I can't remember, it might have been Monday's show, we had Oprah Winfrey out there talking to voters on behalf of Kamala Harris and saying that you might lose your right to vote. You may never get to vote again if Donald Trump is elected. Stephen A. Smith clapping back at Oprah for that rather ridiculous comment. Let's listen to Stephen A.
You're going to look an audience in the face and you're going to tell them that if you vote for Donald Trump, you may not ever be able to cast a vote again. Who believed that? Who believed that coming from Oprah? Truly, who believed that? This is the kind of stuff that alienates an electorate, that alienates a vote or a voter.
All right, what Stephen A. said, he's absolutely right. I don't think anybody but the absolutely most hysterical thought that they were going to lose their right to vote if Donald Trump was elected. Now, the hysterical contingent on the left is pretty big, let's be honest. So there are folks out there who really believed this and who probably believe this right now. I mean, there have been some pretty significant meltdowns that we've seen circling around social media, just people talking into their phone and making social media posts that are obviously not dealing real well right now with their mental health. But did serious people really think that the right to vote was at stake in this election? That's also why the Hitler comparisons fell flat. You could compare anybody to Hitler. You could throw a Hitler allegation against anyone. That doesn't mean it's going to stick. You have to have something to base it on. And Donald Trump's resume, however flawed it might be in some people's minds, and of course, he's not a perfect person. He's done things that I disagree with. He may have done things that you disagree with. I think any thinking person could find fault in some of the things that Donald Trump has done. But to compare him to Hitler? Do you think the average American believed that at all? I don't know how many votes that gained Donald Trump, but I have to believe that there were a lot of people out there that were on the fence that heard the Hitler comparisons and thought, you know what, this is ridiculous. I'm not going with that. And I think it pushed some voters to Donald Trump because Kamala Harris should have been making an appeal to the people on policy. Here's what I'm going to do, but she can never figure that out. She's trying to run to be different than Biden, but she said on The View that she couldn't find any fault with anything that Biden had done for over 3.5 years. Her campaign was a confusing mess. She offered no fresh ideas. Everything in terms of her policy positions was changing from where it was several years ago. And I think people eventually came to realize that there was nothing there that she was offering other than complaining about Donald Trump. And ultimately, as we started getting closer and closer to the election, and given the result that we got, I have to believe the Democrats' internal polling was telling them that they were in some trouble. Trouble that was not being revealed in a lot of the polls that we were privy to as the public. We talked about the Seltzer poll that happened in Iowa that had Kamala up 3 points and Trump absolutely bulldozed her in Iowa. So the public is seeing polls that, I'm going to tell you right now, polls are flawed. We talked yesterday on this program about how much can you really ever trust a political poll again? How many times do the pollsters have to miss before you finally just say, I don't really think that this is as much of a science as they have led me to believe it is? But I'll tell you this, the best polls that are out there are the ones that the campaigns themselves have access to. And they're paying a pretty penny for it. They've got the best information, and they knew late in that campaign that they were in trouble, and they tried to scare people away from Donald Trump yet again. And they leaned into the fear-mongering, and it bit them. One of the things that Donald Trump has been criticized for, Mark Cuban, very vocal, saying that Donald Trump just doesn't surround himself with smart women. He's threatened by smart women. Don't you know that? Mark Cuban says you never see Donald Trump around smart women, which offended, guess what? Probably not very surprising. It offended some smart women who voted for Donald Trump and who have been associated with Donald Trump. Let's look at Mark Cuban here saying what he had to say about Donald Trump and smart women.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple.
Well, that's news to Pat Summerall's daughter, because she's going to be the first female White House chief of staff in the history of this great country. I'm talking about Susan Summerall Wiles. Susie Wiles is going to be the first ever in the history of this country female White House chief of staff. And you can see here Susie Wiles tweeting a little shade back at Mark Cuban, saying, I'm told Mark Cuban needs help identifying the strong and intelligent women surrounding President Trump. Well, here we are. I've been proud to lead this campaign, and Vince McMahon's wife, Linda McMahon, is going to be the chair for his transition. And of course, Laura Trump is the Republican National Committee co-chair. So there are certainly women surrounding Donald Trump, and Susie Wiles is a huge person that Trump leans on. The chief of staff, that is a big deal. And to say that Trump is not surrounded by strong, intelligent women, that girl was raised by Pat Summerall, God damn it. One of the greatest Americans that I've ever known. So I have to believe, with the Summerall blood coursing through her veins, she is both strong and intelligent, much as her father was. Let's go back and talk about Stephen A. again, shall we? Stephen A.'s been weighing in so much on this presidential election this year that he thinks now that maybe he could even be a candidate for president. That's right. Can you imagine President Stephen A. Smith? Mr. Smith goes to Washington. It may seem preposterous, as Stephen himself might offer as a description, but it seems like he's actually thought about it a little bit. Let's go to The View and hear Stephen A. on the subject of how would he feel about a presidential run.
You've been asked, I hear, about running for political office in the future. And some people have said that they could see you running for president. Mm-hmm. Would you do that? You think you qualified to run for president? I mean, the bar is pretty low anyway.
I do not.
Can you rephrase that?
I just think that the bar is really low because Trump really had no political experience and went from 0 to 100, right? He didn't start in the city council and stuff like that. So the bar is low. Anyone can run.
I have said this on many occasions. The answer would be hell no, because I like my life. I'm living a pretty good life. But I must confess, I wish I could debate some of these guys. I'd love to be on a debate stage going up against these guys with the presidency on the line.
We will arrange that.
I'm half joking, but I kind of mean it. I mean, I have no desire to be a congressional figure or a senator. But if you came to me and you told me I had a legitimate shot to win the presidency of the United States of America, I would definitely consider it. But here's the problem.
So you want to break through the line?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, absolutely. For that, yes, because others have. Okay, including Democrats, by the way. Yeah. I mean, they broke the line. What's wrong with me doing it? But I would be an independent because I don't like either side, and I'm not going to be bought and paid for. I'm going to do what I believe is in the best interest of the American people.
Stephen's saying that he would be an independent if he ran for president, but you're never going to be president if you're running as an independent. It's just not how it works, Stephen A. You'd probably run as a Democrat. That's what I think. And you know what? He would have been a better candidate than Kamala Harris. Quite frankly, as Stephen himself might say. I actually believe that. Stephen A. would have been a better candidate than Kamala Harris. The bar is that low at this point. Thursday night football. We had a little football last night, and again, the referees, the officiating in the news for all of the wrong reasons. The Cincinnati Bengals trailing 35-34 against the Baltimore Ravens on the road. They go for a 2-point conversion in the final minute, and Joe Burrow gets face masked on the play. The pass falls incomplete, and there was no flag. No flag on a face mask. And even though we live in the era where you can't even breathe on the quarterback anymore, a rather egregious grabbing of Joe Burrow's head went unpenalized, and the Cincinnati Bengals lose. And it was a game that they really could have used a victory in. Let's see here. What are the big news items from this game? How about Derrick Henry mooning the world? That's one thing. You ever want to see Derrick Henry's butt? Here's your chance, folks. Thursday night football contained brief nudity. If it was in your HBO guide, there would have been a BN. I don't know if that qualifies as an adult situation as well. I'm going to say yes. So let's say adult situations and brief nudity, your Baltimore Ravens. Derrick Henry, the glutes of the greatest running back in the NFL today. I say that with all respect to Saquon Barkley, who we're going to talk about a little bit later in the program. Jamar Chase had a huge game last night for the Bengals that was ultimately wasted in defeat. 11 catches for 164 yards and 3 touchdowns for Jamar Chase. Big game. And it got me thinking about what are some of the greatest wide receiver performances that I can remember in my lifetime. And the first one that came to mind for me this morning was Willie Flipper Anderson. Does anybody remember Flipper Anderson? I had to go and look this up. In 1989, for the Los Angeles Rams, Flipper Anderson set the NFL record. And here you go. These are the most receiving yards ever in a single NFL game. There's your all-time top 20. There have been 6 300-plus yard receiving games in the history of the National Football League, and Flipper Anderson was the first one that came to mind for me. I looked it up, and sure enough, 35 years later, he's still number one. Megatron in second place. Stephon Page. He was probably being thrown to by Joe Kenny that day, I would guess. Stephon Page. But you can look at it. You can see that some of these guys are still active that are on this list. Jamar Chase is actually on the list twice. Those 264 yards that he had last night put him at number 19. It was the 19th most prolific receiving yards game. And Jamar, I don't know, is Jamar the only guy that's on that list twice? I'm glancing at it quickly here, and I think he is. I think he's the only guy with 2 games in the top 20 now, unless I'm missing somebody. So that's pretty impressive. Let's take a look at the most receptions in a game. Anybody care to guess what the most receptions in an NFL game is? Well, it's Brandon Marshall. Hard to believe that this happened. The Chicago Bears. Hard to believe that we're at the top of any passing statistic incredible category. But Kyle Orton. Nobody liked to air it out like Kyle Orton. Interestingly enough, another Purdue quarterback, Jim Everett, was the quarterback for the number 1 all-time yardage game, our friend of this program, the great Jim Everett, and Kyle Orton, another Purdue guy, 2 Boilermakers who end up feeding it to these guys. Brandon Marshall had 21 receptions on December 13th, 2009. Actually, what am I talking about? That's not, that wasn't, was that Kyle Orton? He's not a Bear. He was with the Broncos then. That's why he did well. He was on the Broncos at that point in time. Brandon Marshall was also a Bear. So I had myself confused here. I don't know. I want to click on this and confirm. I'm just lying to you folks right now. Is it Kyle Orton? I don't know. Check, Tim. Tell me. Was Kyle Orton the quarterback that day, or am I just making up all kinds of bullshit stories here? I don't know. But anyway, it's interesting. I think it was, in fact, Kyle Orton. So you had a Bears quarterback and a Bears receiver later in his career, Brandon Marshall, combined to do something incredible, and neither one of them did anything like that in Chicago. So the world makes sense to me once again, because I just didn't think that the Bears could possibly have produced that. And I didn't remember it happening here in this city. Let's talk about Saquon Barkley while we're on the subject of great running backs. Saquon Barkley was subjected to a random, air quotes, drug test. I never know how random the drug tests are, but he got we're gonna say that it was random. The NFL claims that it was random. He got drug tested right after the game, after this superhuman feat. And it reminds me of the time that I tweeted that Bo Jackson was briefly suspended in 1989 when he tested positive for performance enhancement by being Bo Jackson. That's right. He tested positive for being Bo Jackson. I think Saquon Barkley has only tested positive for being Saquon Barkley. But that was still one of the most incredible things I've ever seen a running back do. When I think of the most incredible things I've seen running backs do, I think of Barry Sanders. I think of Walter Payton. I think of Gale Sayers. I think of Earl Campbell. And now I'm going to remember Saquon Barkley doing that. Bo Jackson, too, for that matter. Dwayne Wade, the Dwayne Wade statue continues to be a source of pleasure for me. Is it the worst statue of an athlete that's ever been erected in the United States? And if Ronnie T-Shirts was here, he would say, hey, you said erected, probably. But take a look at that. Trying to distract Yale's kicker, Columbia puts up Dwayne Wade. I never knew that they tried to distract kickers like that. That's what happens when you're shooting free throws on the road. But no, we've got Dwayne Wade up there. Look, kicking's already hard enough, but maybe you want to kick a football at that thing. Kill it with fire, that statue. Columbia, too, of all things. That's the first funny thing that's happened in Columbia for a while. When I first looked at that, I thought that it was an angry pro-Palestinian protester, because they make that face a lot on the campus of Columbia. But it turns out it's actually D. Wade. I'm surprised. I thought that was somebody that was angry. Let me bring in now, he's not an international streaming star. He's a domestic producing star. Producer Tim joining me on the program today from his candy corn silo that he has. I love the fact that you're leaning into the candy corn thing, Tim. Defiant. And I respect it.
Man, it took a week, but I think I recovered. Some brutal comments from our friends out there in SS70s land. But yes, candy corn, the bag is done. It's empty.
Look, it's important to remember that 2% of the public was with you. You know what I mean? Like, if you do the math, like if 10,000 people voted in that poll, what's 10%? Is that like 20? There were 20 people that agreed with you. You just need to go hang out with those people. Tim, I'm concerned, though, before we get to the poll of the day, I'm concerned that there are 40 to 43 rhesus monkeys that have escaped from a research center in South Carolina.
Oh my God, there's one right here.
Alpha Genesis. Hey, what? Oh my God. Look behind you. There's two behind you, Tim. Now there are, hang on, update. There are now 38 to 41 rhesus monkeys that are unaccounted for because we have spotted two behind Tim. It's the Alpha Genesis Primate Bio Lab. There's There's been a leak of monkeys, and they're just prowling through South Carolina, apparently.
Some of the videos are a little dicey. Authorities have told everyone to go in and close their windows and avoid contact. But yet there's some people out there trying to get videos of them, in the woods. Look, man, there have been, to evoke Ronnie T-shirts, dude, there are so many movies about this subject. Outbreak. Dude, 40 to 43. How did they not know how many monkeys got away? Like when they did the head count afterward, did they all get away? Are there still a few there? Were they not sure how many monkeys they had? If they round up 40, like, are we ever going to know whether they got them all or if there's still 2 or 3 out there just living their best life? Right.
I've got a lot of questions about how tight of a ship they're running at the Alpha Genesis Primate Bio Lab, Tim.
What have they been infected with? What are they running around with? Have they been cloned? Yeah, I'm with you, man. 40, 43, what's the difference? A little scary.
This is going to make COVID look like a fucking picnic, Tim. Everything seems like it's going well in our society, and then just wham, here come the rhesus monkeys. Tim, as you know, it's Championship Friday, too, by the way, on this program. But don't let me get ahead of myself. No, you had more monkey thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're good. You're good. It's definitely, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there about the monkeys, the timing of the release. We'll see how it all plays out.
Okay, well now I want to know about it. Give me a good rhesus monkey conspiracy theory.
We stick to the facts here. Well, some were wearing MAGA hats apparently, if you believe some folks and some of the artists that are out there.
This is the first. I believe it's part of Project 2025, isn't it? Release the monkeys to go rein in the liberals, and I believe that the monkeys will be driving the fortified vehicles that will be taking everyone to an internment camp this winter. So nice use of the monkeys there on part of the presumptive Trump administration. How about this guy? There's some 70s baseball for you. This cat right here out at Wrigley Field, that's make beer vendors great again, I say. And I'll take 2, you fantastic bastard. Look at that guy. Wrigley Field, 85%, 90% empty, just like Lee Elia said it. Well, 85% of the world's working. And the juvenile delinquents and the unemployable are out at Wrigley Field pounding beers. I'm sure you could get 2 for $1 back in those days. What else am I tweeting, Tim? Here's one for you. I feel like when you drive this off the lot back in the 70s, the dealership guy would just say, Godspeed. Good luck. Hope you make it. The official car of I just hope we get there. I mean, that's a wing and a prayer. Fred Flintstone wouldn't trade for that vehicle. I'm telling you right now, are there any foot? Yeah, I don't know. The Gremlin Pacer debate. The 70s produced a lot of, that's a Gremlin, right? Is that a Gremlin? I get my Gremlins and Pacers and Pintos confused, but I believe that is the Gremlin right there. Because there's an ad that I've tweeted before where somebody had their dog in that back trunk area, and the dog didn't look happy to be back there. I don't think anybody's ever been happy. There were guys that were picking up their prom dates in that piece of shit back in the 70s too. You imagine just waiting for Bobby to show up, and he comes around the corner with his tuxedo on and comes around to the passenger side and opens that door, and then maybe he throws in a Meatloaf 8-track to take it to the next level. I said, when it's time to take the mood of the road trip to the next level, you never go wrong with some Jim Steinham and Meatloaf. Glowing like the metal on the edge of a knife. It never felt so good, it never felt so right. Sky Point to Meatloaf.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.